I'm proud of the fact that we showed up and we delivered value. The result, is it a 10 out of 10? No. But I know this experience is way more valuable for us and our community than if we didn't do it. And that's where it has to start.
And so that's how you do it. You just say, I'm grateful I showed up today. I'm grateful I tried today. And another thing too, how do you transform losses into wins? Get a little better. Focus on getting a little better. I don't have to be that much better. I have to be a little bit better.
What's the most important mindset to adopt to keep progressing beyond the failure?
Growth mindset. Mm-hmm. Having a growth mindset. Carol Dweck's book, Mindset. We did it in book club. Shout out to the Next Level You book club. World-class book club. World-class books with world-class people. Yeah, you just have to believe that it's not just like... You got to think of it this way. You're not just getting an X in the box. Like, you might get an X in the box that says, well, you didn't accomplish what you want. But on the back end of that X, there's so many lessons that you can bring with you. So a growth mindset, number one, and the deep belief that this mistake is not the end. It will actually help me in the future. You have to believe. It's kind of like an investment. It's like, yeah, I tried really hard, but it didn't go my way. Well, at least I know what not to try next time. And I know that sounds cliche and it's probably on a fortune cookie somewhere, but I really do believe that is the right mindset to have. It might not happen. It most likely won't happen immediately. But if you do try to lean into that and reflect on past losses, that might be a good thing to do. Look back on your past losses and then try to figure out what lessons you have taken from them. That might be a good place to start, honestly.
A deep belief that I work really, really hard on, belief, mindset, to answer this question, mindset and belief are similar, is I would rather try and fail than not try at all. That is something that I deeply, deeply believe. And that, I'll be honest with everyone, it's not always easy because the pain of failure and embarrassment does hurt. And to say otherwise would be just false, honestly. I've tried a lot of things, and sometimes I've succeeded, and I've failed a lot. But I failed a lot more than a lot of the people who never tried. And so I'll use J.K. Rowling. She said this in her Harvard address in 2012. She said this: "You may never fail on the scale that I did, but some failure in life is inevitable, unless you live so cautiously that you never try at all, in which case you fail by default." Those words, there's a reason I memorized that. It's so good. You cannot succeed without failure. The mindset to have is try, fail, try again better, fail again better, and just rinse and repeat.
How soon after doing something should you go back and review to pinpoint your failures, and what are strategies you use to make sure the mistakes don't happen again?
Go ahead, Jeff.
How soon should you? As soon as you can tolerate it. No. I would say the sooner the better, while the emotion is high. Human beings are emotional creatures. We say physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. If you aren't emotional about something, it's going to be very hard to change it. So when the emotions are high, but I also want to caution everybody. So let's say this live podcast was really not our best work, hypothetically.
Hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically.
Of course.
I might take a day before I re-listen to it. I've had speeches, for example, that I just didn't think were my best work, and I was like, I'm not going to review that tonight. No way. And then sometimes we've had speeches where it's like, Kev, let's go review this now. Let's go review this now together. And it's nice to have someone there. But I would say it's up to you. I would say don't avoid it forever and have courage. But I do think that human beings have trouble with constructive feedback. Just like that photo that was posted of me online when I was drunk. That felt terrible. But it also got me to change. So as long as you have self-belief in your own ability to transform, and this is the hard part. This year's losses, I just want a quick disclaimer. This year's losses don't become next year's wins if you have a fixed mindset. Because this year's losses can just bring pain. If you don't believe you can change, it might just bring pain and keep you stuck. So be very weary of that in this entire episode. Like, this year's losses become next year's wins as long as you learn and grow and improve, which is predicated on the belief that you actually can. But to answer the original question, I would say judge it based on how you feel. Don't let the emotions dissipate, because if you do, you won't get all the change. But if you do it while the wound is still open, that might be too much.
Yeah, I think it's personal. And depending on how much you've done it, it depends on the length of time you should wait. I think back to one of my favorite stories of all time. I was up to bat when I was just a little leaguer, just a young version of Kev, trying to win the game for his team, and I was very good, and everybody was like, oh, Kev's up, we're going to be fine. And I struck out on 3 pitches right down the middle, 1, 2, 3, and I cried the whole way home. I can tell you that I was not ready to talk about it. I was not ready to think about it for at least a day. And then I thought about what happened. It was like, okay, well, one of them was a curveball, and I didn't know how to hit curveballs, blah, blah, blah. Next time in the batting cage, I'll make sure that I try to shore up that weakness. So it definitely took a longer time back then than literally the same night of me having the kids do push-ups at my speech. That was the same night Alan and I did that. So I think it has to be the fine line between the pain is not too high where it's going to hurt you even worse to watch it, but also you're not too comfortable where you don't want to put yourself back into discomfort. I think there's a sweet spot there for all of us, and I think you kind of know. Alan, you might have this experience too. When things are really going well and you see a text message that's going to be difficult to respond to come through, or WhatsApp message, subconsciously you're like, boy, I don't want to do this right now. I don't want to do this. But oftentimes when you're like kind of sort of down in the mud, you're like, I'm already here. Like, let me just take a look at this because it's not really going to wreck my mood anymore. So I think it's a fine line. But if you're burning to the ground, you don't want to take on more pressure and pain. So it's personal, and I think we know, but it all depends on the length of your journey and how much work you've done in this regard, I would say.
One more thing real quick. And Kev, strong work on the push-ups. That was a solid panic move. Mid-speech, for everyone out there, all the speakers out there.
Holistic self-improvement. That is holistic as it comes. Push-ups.
Push-ups up front. It's funny. That guy was hammering them. Would you get to like 50-something? I honestly don't know if I could have done it.
I almost was defeated by one of the gentlemen there, and I was like, good for you. I was so out of breath that I had to like take a pause. I couldn't deliver my speech as I wanted to.
So what was I going to say? This is the second time I've forgotten. Holy crap. What was the last thing I was going to say? Continue to the next question. I'll come up with it. I will.
Okay. How do you reframe losses as wins if you're lower in confidence?
You really have to look. You have to look for the lessons. I had a client one time. I don't remember what the action was, but I sat down with this client virtually, and this person said, I don't think it's going to go well. I don't think we're going to get the result that I want. And I said, that's the problem. I don't care about the result. I care more about the action. I don't care if you approach somebody and the person doesn't say yes to the date, or I don't care if you apply for the job and you don't get it. You're going to learn more about yourself in the process of trying than if you just said, well, I can't get that job, or that person's not going to date me. I think that's what it is. You have to give yourself credit for trying, even if you don't get the result you want, because if the quote-unquote old you wouldn't have tried at all, that is progress. It just doesn't seem like it because we're not getting the result we want. That would be what I would say is you got to give yourself some damn credit for trying, even if you don't get the ultimate result that you want. I am proud that Alan and I showed up here today. Although it wasn't, again, there was like background noise. I should have closed the windows. It was a whole thing, right? But I'm proud of the fact that we showed up and we delivered value. The result, is it a 10 out of 10? No. But I know this experience is way more valuable for us and our community than if we didn't do it. And that's where it has to start. That's what I would say.
Tortoise in the hare. How do you reframe losses as wins? I can tell a lot of stories right now, but I remember coaching for free 4 years ago, 3.5 to 4 years ago. Kevin's been on many, many sales calls, a lot of which didn't convert. Most of which. But yeah, you gotta give yourself the W for showing up. And it's interesting, we have something called total productive output that we do peak performance tracking, and essentially it's just habit tracking. So whether you have 9 habits or 12 habits or 15 habits or whatever, I always say this because people are like, oh, I got 64%. It's like, yeah, but that's 64% better than anyone else who's not tracking habits, which, by the way, is almost everybody. Not a lot of people track habits, honestly, statistically speaking. So, like, you got to give yourself credit for the 64%. And then that 64% will eventually be 67, and then eventually 70, and then eventually 75, and then eventually 80, and then eventually 84. I've seen so many clients, the trend line, I have the graphs, is up. I have some clients that I've had for 2 years now. The trend line is so far up. They started so low. It's just, I think it's how do you reframe losses as wins? You're thinking too short term. You just have to think a little longer term. Amy, at the mall, you were afraid to talk to strangers. Now you're here in front of potentially thousands of listeners, right? Because this gets repurposed, obviously not live thousands. But it's like you were afraid to speak to a stranger at the mall. And by the end of that day, you're riding zoo animals around the mall. If you guys don't know the story, you're probably confused right now. Kevin and Amy, probably 4.5 years ago, they went to the mall together. Amy said, I want to fear chase. And they talked to strangers at the mall, and then eventually they rode zoo animals around. Here they are years later. You know, it's unbelievable what can happen. So how do you reframe losses into wins? Showing up is a win. Showing up consistently when you're afraid is an even bigger win. And consistently having courage, which is facing these fears and fear chasing, is a win. And honestly, even though I screwed up that marathon, it is a win. It is. It gave me something. It's a story forever. I remember thinking that too. And I remember thinking, like, this is one of the most painful experiences of my entire life, physically painful. And I remember thinking, like, pain is temporary. This story will last a lifetime. Like, I'll always have this. I'll know I did it. I'll know I finished. Because every part of me wanted to stop. Seriously. And again, kudos to the marathoners of the world, by the way. Oh my God. Right? But, like, there's something about trying and showing up that you have to give yourself credit for. You have to. Because I know the external world looks at the shiny stuff. It does. It looks at the cars and the homes and all that stuff. And that's fine. That's all good. But what it really takes to win is consistently failing forward. And so that's how you do it. You just say, I'm grateful I showed up today. I'm grateful I tried today. You know, and another thing too, how do you transform losses into wins? Get a little better. Focus on getting a little better. I don't have to be that much better. I have to be a little bit better. Earlier today, I was listening to a book on oratory, which is communicating effectively. I'm a little bit better at communicating, maybe not on this live podcast, but in general, I learned something today. I learned something today that I'm going to use, and it's the power of word choice, that words that I choose matter. And she goes through all these historical speeches of how they chose their words and why they chose their words. See, just a little bit better. So even though this podcast might have been a little bit of a short-term loss because it wasn't perfect, Kevin's in a hotel room, we didn't have enough time to prep, like, it's still, we showed up, we put in the work, and we're going to get a little bit better. And after this, we're going to learn from it because Amy, Kevin, and I always do an experience review of what could we have done better.
Hello everyone at G6, my name is Roberta. I'm glad to be connected with all of you. We had a wonderful last few months, encouraging each other, keeping each other accountable, especially Lynn. Thank you very much for being there. And it's been an amazing journey. One thing I wanted to highlight, what it was done for me, is it has helped me to reprioritize. I think I was suffering from people pleasing, and especially with this online space, everybody just coming to sell you whatever they are selling and their group and their funnels, whatever it is. And in being nice, there's a lot of time I wasted on things that are not in alignment with what I want to do with my life. I wasted so much time, and this accepting friend requests of people who are not in alignment with what you're doing, because we live in a world where everybody asks you how many followers you have, and they think that's where the value comes from. I am done with that. I'm rejecting friend requests and group requests that are not in alignment with whatever I'm pursuing. So this has been a life changer for me, because I realized how much time I wasted not being productive just because I'm being nice to people, and I'm done doing that. Because I've learned to prioritize things that help me become a better person. If someday in the future, 5-10 years from now, I want to pursue those things they were selling, and I respect the hustle, I may go back to those things. But right now, whatever it is I'm doing, I am not accepting any invite, anything that is not in alignment with my purpose and my mission right now. And I realized, as I said, how much time I had wasted. I thought I needed time management classes just to keep up, but it just was not for me. And it's been surreal, actually. Even when they message me and they try to be nice, I know all of those scripted sales pitches, and they try to be nice to you and say, we will help and with this and with that. I told one guy actually on the message, I said, I'm sorry, I hear what you're saying, but no, this is not for me, but thank you very much for reaching out, which I would have not done in the past. So this has been a game changer for me. Thank you very much for the group coaching. It's been an eye-opener, and I hope everyone's journey continues to rise.
Well, I'll say this. I just want to add this. Okay, did it go perfectly? No. But what are the wins? Number one, Alan and I didn't prep almost at all, and the fact that we have stories to reference and we're in flow and we're in rapport, that's great. Like the fact that we had a good amount of attendees based on the title, that's great, right? It taught us a lot of things. So I would think of it this way, and this is the last thing, and then we'll hammer another question. If you think of it as two buckets, how many pieces do I put in the bucket for wins? How many pieces do I put in the bucket for results I wanted? You'll always have pieces to put in a bucket. It just might not be the results you wanted. Maybe it's a lesson. Maybe it's a pain to avoid in the future. Maybe it's you learned something about yourself that you didn't realize. I learned today, even though this isn't necessarily a 10 out of 10 win, that I can kind of flow with it if we don't have time to prep perfectly. That's a very valid lesson for me, and I wouldn't have had that lesson if we didn't do it the way we did it. So I just wanted to add that. We got time for another question, Aim.
What are the consequences for not being able to see losses as lessons?
Staying stuck, staying still, not achieving your goals, not achieving your dreams, not getting better. I don't think we can get better without lessons. We don't think about this enough as human beings, in my opinion. But like little kids, they don't know a lot. Understandable. I didn't either when I was a little kid. And I know intuitively they know a lot of stuff in comparison to how long they've been on the planet. But like, I always say this during my speeches all the time. I said, everyone think of a terrible decision they made in high school. Everyone can think of several terrible choices. I mean, just bad, right? And I said, you would never make that choice again, true or false? Everyone shakes their head. Yeah, I would never make that. Or no, or whatever. I would never make that choice again. And I was at a virtual training recently. I did this. And I'm like, why would you not ever make that choice again? And everyone's contemplating. And I said, because you are now aware of the long-term consequences. You are now aware of the risk you took. You are now aware that that was not the most intelligent choice at the time. And so to answer this question, it's if you can't learn lessons, you're going to make the same mistakes over and over and over and over and over again. If you bought a brand new car on a credit card, and then you paid 25% interest on that car for 10 years, you will probably not make that mistake again. Imagine if you couldn't learn that lesson. You're going to end up paying twice as much for every car you own for the rest of your life. I think, and this is what I'll end with, John Maxwell, one of my favorite authors, he's written, I think, over 100 books at this point. He's written one of my favorite books of all time. It's called The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. I always have it right behind me right here. And he says, people think wisdom comes with age. He said, no. Sometimes age comes alone. And I think that wisdom is this: knowledge, which is awareness, plus experience, plus reflection. You have to reflect on your experience. And so the original question was, what's the downside of losses if you can't learn the lesson? The downside of losses if you can't learn the lesson is you're just going to not grow. You're not going to improve. You're not going to make better choices. You're no longer going to put yourself on the high end of probability when it comes to positive things happening in your life. If you know nothing about, everyone think of a relationship that they were in, their very first intimate relationship. I guarantee you if that was your first intimate relationship, you made a lot of quote unquote mistakes. You had a lot of failing forward. I know I certainly did. Because I had never been in a relationship before. I had no idea what I was doing. Now I'm blessed. I met Emilia at 30. I get to invest all the lessons from the first 30 years into this relationship so that I won't screw it up. And I'm so grateful for that. I've told her that. Because I'm like, oh, thank goodness I learned all those lessons before. And so it's really, really important to understand that if you can't learn lessons, you're never going to improve. And if you can't improve, your life is most likely not going to improve either.
I would say these two simple words, it's actually 3, it's 4. You most likely quit. 4 words. You'll adopt the identity of I'm not the type of person who can succeed at this. And you'll say, well, I keep making these mistakes and I can't make any progress. This isn't for me. Alan referenced this, but I want to tell this story quickly. So very early in my podcast journey, I got the opportunity to interview what at the time was a dream interview for me. His name was Justin Wren. He is a professional mixed martial arts fighter. He's been on Joe Rogan a handful of times. And he also is a big-time philanthropist where he goes to the jungles of the Congo and builds water wells for the pygmy villages there. And has gotten like malaria and several different diseases doing it, and he's had to take time off of fighting, but that's something he's super passionate about. So there was this unique opportunity to interview him, and I had never done a remote interview before. So I downloaded a voice recorder on my phone, and I tried a bunch of different stuff, and I said, this is what I'm going to do. Cool. I'm in a hotel room in New Jersey after work, and I get the opportunity to interview him. And I'm like, all right, I'm good to go. Are you good? He said, yeah, we're good to go. So I said, all right, I'm recording. Hit the record button. We're off to the races. Probably, I mean, at the time, it was like a 9 out of 10 interview. It was really good. It was a really, really, really good interview. But I listened back to it, and it was completely unusable. I sent it out. I got the audio like recalibrated and remixed, and it was unusable. I couldn't use it. Now, big time, quote unquote, failure. I definitely wanted to quit because I was like, oh my God, I just got the biggest interview I'm ever going to get, and it didn't work out. Because of that failure, I learned all about the mixer that allowed us to actually do high quality remote interviews. And then, and this is how it connects, that mixer I ended up quote unquote failing on when I was trying to help one of my clients. And I ended up having the same thing where it was like, okay, what's the lesson? Okay, don't let that happen again. That is what it is. The Hyperconscious podcast never would have continued, and it never would have been Next Level You, and you most likely wouldn't be listening to us because at least I wouldn't be doing this probably. So that is what I would end on. Mistakes are inevitable. They just are. But if you can find the lessons and just do your best to avoid making the same mistake, you have a 100%, well, I won't say 100%, but a much higher percentage likelihood of success. And that story is a very good example of that, is what I would say. Anything to add quickly, Jeff? I can see that you're...
Thank you, brother. Very quick. I want, and I've set the intention, I hope all our listeners do the same. I think one of the reasons why we are so afraid to make mistakes are because we want to believe we're a certain way and that we're better than we really are or worse than we really are or whatever, which is all just ego. Or we want to avoid all embarrassment, which again is just ego. Wanting to look a certain way versus just give it our best shot. And I think that humility, and that's the word that I'm going to be leaning into in this next chapter. I think that humility is, let's just give this a go. And humility is knowing you're going to make mistakes. I think that's what humility is just knowing you're imperfect, knowing you're infallible, knowing you're fallible, knowing that you're going to make mistakes, knowing you're going to screw it up, but trying anyway. And I think that if you can just get rid of the ego and have courage and humility, I think you're going to be much better off. You're going to be much better off. The person who tries and screws up and learns from it is always way better off than the person who just protects themselves all the time from any failure or any mistakes or any losses. And so I hope this today has inspired everyone to try to go out and fail forward a little more. Go out and try some stuff you might not have tried. You know, what's the worst case scenario? You get a little embarrassed. People make fun of you. Like, whatever. It's going to be better than staying stuck.
And if you have the right people in your life, they won't make fun of you. They'll support you. That's another good way to find out if you have the right people in your life. Next Level Nation. I was on a podcast the other day, and this person said to me, I did a bunch of research on you, and your website is incredible. And I was like, thank you. The amazing Alessandro did a bunch of new upgrades, and our website is the best it's ever been. So my plug tonight is check out the new website. It's the same website, nextleveluniverse.com, but it is brand new. Alessandro has put a lot of work into it, and it is very much upgraded and updated up to our new level, our new next level. So check it out, nextleveluniverse.com. If you want to purchase our course when you are there, it is, I believe, $47 for our Next Level Live 2022 course. It is the most valuable $47 course in the world, according to me, in my belief.
And if you are strapped for cash, there's a free course as well called the
Correct.
Next Level 5 to Thrive on there as well. Also, I'm doing free coaching calls with listeners. If you've ever wondered, what is this coaching thing about? I don't understand. I don't know the value. I've never tried coaching. Give it a shot. I will not sell you anything. I love to meet our listeners, and it's going to be a half hour. I tend to go over. Shh, don't tell anyone. I tend to go over. As long as I'm not missing another call, which I refuse to do anymore. But free call with listeners. I'm not going to sell you anything. My only intention for those calls are to meet you, to get a bird's eye view of your life and give you a new perspective on what's possible for you. And I'm not going to sell you anything. If you ask me about my coaching, I will tell you, but otherwise you will not hear a word about my coaching. I just want to meet you. The link will be in the comments and or show notes below.
Beautiful. Next Level Nation, thank you as always for tuning in. Thank you to those of you who tuned in live. Thank you to those of you who are listening to the replay. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. I feel like I am a game show host holding the microphone like this. At NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Please reach out.
Bye.
Bye, Aim.